Years after slavery, the black community was doing better. We were going up, up, up.
That was Candace Owens arguing that, hey, it is socialism that has led to the terrible economic situation for people of color. And the debate that she had was with Cornel West, as you might have seen in that video. Laura Ingraham hosted this debate segment. And Candace Owens said a lot of really dumb things throughout. Let's take it.
In this video, we join Anna Kasparian as she dives into the heated debate between Candace Owens and Cornel West, a clash that has sparked significant controversy. Owens, known for her divisive rhetoric, argues that welfare policies and socialism have harmed the black community, while also denying the existence of systemic racism and the long history of injustice that has plagued America for centuries. Her claims, including a disturbing defense of nationalism, are examined and refuted using historical evidence and rational critique. Take a look.
100 years after slavery, the black community was doing better. We were going up, up, up. Then suddenly they socialized our community via welfare policies, and the black community started going down, down, down. And you're sitting here supporting a candidate that is advocating for making that on a larger scale. He's saying, we're not just going to do it to the black community, we're going to do it to every community in America. Well, you know his policies do not work. You know that socialism has led to more deaths than anything else in the last 100 years.
So the talking point, I know. So the talking point that Candace Owens has been pushing, she's no longer with Turning Point USA. But when she was at Turning Point USA, she was paid to say that it is not systemic racism that leads to, the disparity in wealth and income between, white individuals and black individuals in America. It's because of socialist policies. It's because of welfare that the black community is being held down. Now, first of all, that makes no sense. We know, and we're gonna debunk that in just a second. But think about who funds Turning Point USA. They're the very corporate donors that corrupt our politicians to push for deregulation, to push for tax cuts. So look, they're very savvy. It is a multi-pronged approach. It doesn't just stop at corrupting politicians. They attempt to corrupt education. They attempt to, corrupt young minds, which is what's happening with Turning Point USA. And it's terrible. And
in her latest attempt to rewrite history, Candace Owens asserts that socialism and welfare policies are responsible for the economic and social decline of the black community. She claims that after slavery, black Americans were prospering, only to be dragged down by government programs. Owens accuses Cornel West of advocating for policies that, in her view, would replicate this alleged destruction nationwide. She even goes as far as to equate socialism with historical atrocities, arguing it has caused more deaths than any other ideology. However, as Anna Kasparian rightly points out, Owens' narrative grossly oversimplifies history and deliberately overlooks the realities of systemic racism, violence, and oppression, including Jim Crow laws, lynchings, and church bombings. Kasparian further criticizes Owens for conflating authoritarian regimes like those of Stalin and Mao with democratic socialism, failing to understand that programs such as Social Security and Medicare are designed to support vulnerable communities, not to control or oppress them.
Look, people like Candace Owens lead pathetic lives because they're paid to sell their own identity out. And so that's just the reality of it, because none of the things that she says is true. And so I guess they get paid handsomely. I don't know how they sleep at night. So let's begin to correct the things that she said. First of all, she, on two different occasions there, supported white nationalism, which has murdered black people in this country for hundreds of years. It was white supremacy, the idea of that drove slavery, Jim Crow, the Klan, etc. Now you have a African-American woman paid to defend white nationalism. That is disgusting, okay? And then in the earlier clip, she talked about, African-Americans were doing fine for 100 years after slavery until welfare came to help them. Really, they were doing fine? How about the lynchings? How about the Klan? How about the bombings of the churches where little girls were massacred? You think they were doing fine? How about when they didn't allow African Americans to vote, even though they had the right to vote? That's what the 1964 Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act were all about. So the horrible years where they're being oppressed against the law and against the Constitution, you call the good years. And then when someone actually tries to help the African American community, you say, oh, that's when things started to go down, down, down. I mean, it's so perverse. And by the way,
she didn't even mention Jim Crow laws, right?
Of course.
Yeah, she didn't mention any of the stuff that actually matters.
I don't know if she's just pathetically stupid and doesn't know any history at all, or she knows the history of how brutal white nationalism.
Kasparian and Cenk Uygur highlight the blatant hypocrisy in conservative rhetoric, where figures like Donald Trump openly support corporate socialism through massive subsidies for farmers and generous tax breaks for the wealthy corporations. Unlike these elite-focused handouts, democratic socialism aims to lift the entire population through fair and inclusive programs that address real social needs. By ignoring this distinction, Owens disregards the very real benefits that such policies have brought to millions of people. Her version of history, depicting the post-slavery black community as thriving until the introduction of welfare, is not only inaccurate, but deeply offensive.
Of supremacy has been African Americans and thinks, I don't care at all. Where's my money? Oh, the only color I see is green. You want me to sell out black people and lie over and over and over again about how wonderful white people were to us as they were lynching us in the South? Great. Where's my check? I'm in, right? None of it is backed by facts. I mean, listen to what she said about the Nazis. She said it would have been fine if they just stayed in Germany. Really? If they just murdered all the Jews and the Poles and the minorities and the LGBT community and the Roma and all those people inside Germany, that would have been fine? That would have been fine. Do you know what Hitler did to African American athletes? Of course you don't, because you're a moron that doesn't know a goddamn thing, okay? And so now she says, oh, well, look, if they just made the trains run on time inside Germany, everything would have been hunky-dory. It's just absolutely grotesque.
And look, the heart of the conversation or the debate was about socialism and how destructive it is. So she attempted to fearmonger about socialism. And look, Cornel West, you should watch the full debate because he did such a fantastic job rebutting her and giving real evidence and logic to her arguments. But one thing that really stood out to me was, okay, so you don't like welfare programs, you don't like any type of government assistance, then maybe you should speak out against Donald Trump wanting to give farmers $15 billion in subsidies because of the damage he's done as a result of this trade war to these farmers. By the way, the majority of this money, I would argue, doesn't even go to the small town farmers who are the most affected. Usually it goes to some of these massive corporate farms. But anyway, my point is, what do you think about that? How come there's never any anger about that? There's never any pushback by the right.
Kasparian and Uygur dismantle this claim by emphasizing the brutal realities of systemic racism, voter suppression, and oppressive Jim Crow laws, which severely limited black Americans' opportunities. They argue that significant progress in racial equality only came through federal actions like the Civil Rights Act, directly contradicting Owens's claim that government involvement has been solely harmful. Furthermore, Owens's comments on why nationalism, especially her disturbing implication that Hitler's actions would have been acceptable had they stayed within Germany, reveal a shocking misunderstanding of history. Kasparian and Uygur stress that Hitler's ideology was fundamentally inhumane, regardless of geographical limits. Through these critiques, they expose the weaknesses in Owens's arguments and challenge her revisionist views on both history and public policy.
So now, what is corporate socialism, what Anna's referring to? Bank bailouts, tax subsidies. You know that the oil companies are still getting billions of dollars in subsidies. For what? For what? They're the most profitable companies in the world. Why should they be getting subsidies? That is socialism for the rich. And Candace Owens doesn't mind any of that. She's like, did the check clear? Then I love corporate socialism. That's how she makes a living. That's what she's paid to tell these horrible lies to deceive people because of corporate socialism. Ironically, she's also the benefactor of that. She doesn't do anything productive for a living.
That's right.
Okay, she just takes checks and then says, what do you need me to say? I'm here for you. And so she lives like a socialist every day, Cenk. Okay, but it's a corporate socialist.
And since she has such strong words against socialism and these, government safety net programs.
Cornel West's response to Candace Owens was a calm, reasoned rebuttal grounded in logic and history. He defended social programs like Medicare and Social Security as essential supports for millions, including marginalized groups, and countered Owens's fear-driven view of socialism by explaining democratic socialism as a tool for reducing inequality. While Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur didn't explore West's points in detail, they praised his thoughtful approach.
I just want to note that a Harvard study done in 2009 indicated that 45,000 Americans die every single year because of our terrible capitalistic healthcare system. We also have this huge issue where, capitalism has led to private prisons where now there's a profit motive to imprison as many people as humanly possible and to pass these insane tough on crime laws. So has that had any impact on the black community in America? Because I believe it has, but you don't want to talk about that. That's the type of capitalism you love, right?
So look, it's not to say that you can't ever be a black conservative. If you care about balancing budgets, if you care about, hey, did the SNAP program go too far and create some degree of dependency, although it did save and help millions of kids get food assistance, et cetera, so they don't starve to death. Well, we can have an intelligent conversation about that. But an intelligent conversation is not Candace Owens telling you that the period of lynchings in America was wonderful for African Americans, and that if the Germans had just murdered Jews inside of Germany, that everything would have been great. No, she is the definition of a sellout.
Their own critique of Owens was far more direct, calling her views pathetically stupid and accusing her of pushing harmful narratives for personal gain. They argued that her rhetoric distorts history and undermines the fight for justice, painting her as a divisive figure whose motives deserve serious scrutiny. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you don't want to miss out on the hottest celebrity news, make sure to subscribe to Daily Finder.